Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Health or High Water podcast. You're joining us once again, or maybe even for the first time, so we hope you're having a great day. Going to give a couple shout-outs here. First of all, Kristy's here joining us as a guest. We're going to give you an introduction. How are you feeling today?
Great. Hi, all.
We're going to get into some fantastic stuff. I'll let Tripp kind of do the intro on that in a second. Bethany, what's happening? How you feeling?
Good. I'm having a great morning so far.
Nice. For those who haven't checked into our previous podcast, Bethany is our pelvic floor coach here at Ascend Performance Training. Does a lot more than that too, though.
Yeah, all the things.
How's that been going?
Good. I had a new patient this morning, and it went really well.
Nice. And you've been fixing my back and trips when we have time?
As needed, yes.
And, of course, your favorite co-host, DNA-based program designer, joke extraordinaire, Tripp Parks. What's happening?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what's up, Raj?
All right, so thanks so much. And we'll do shout-outs, too, for our sponsors at the end of the podcast. So, go ahead, take it over, Tripp, anything, and then intro us and what we're going to talk about today.
Well, I thought we'd do a new little segment here today. We're going to do quick news.
Love it.
It's going to be 30 seconds. So in news today for genetics, we found out that we don't have tails because of our genetics. Crazy news. End of news.
End of news.
Oh, gosh. And if we've also been doing some work. Check out our last podcast at, what was the title? Assisted Living Centers. But we do classes over there, and you're dropping the most inappropriate, funny, well-timed jokes that the people are loving. So I always cringe. I'm like, oh, God.
I always look at you and we're like, was that okay? You're like, oh, it's on the edge.
Oh, it's too late
There's
now.
There's nothing I can do. So why don't you go ahead and give Kristy an introduction and then kind of a rundown what we're talking about, and let's get into some fun.
Well, hey, Kristy, we're really happy to have you. She is the No Bull Coach. She specializes in autoimmune disease and chronic inflammation disorders. She's Duke certified health and wellness coach and founder of healthandwellnesscoaches.com, as well as the No Bull Way. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, of course. Well, we love having all sorts of different kinds of people on here. And your story about, 10 years ago is the anniversary, 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, this is my 10-year death-iversary, or near-death anniversary, but I like to call it my death-iversary. I really felt like I died and became a new person. So I'm pretty proud of that today.
So when we just got into talking, you mentioned that you lost a substantial amount of weight. Obviously, podcast listeners can't see you. You're in fantastic shape. Why did the weight? This is a heavy question right off the bat, but let's get into it. What got the weight on in the first place? Was it genetic? Was it epigenetic combination?
Ooh.
What was it?
I like that you went to both because it's really a combination of all of the above. From a very young age, I had chronic inflammatory disorders and autoimmune disorders start to pop up. For those that are medically trained, I was a C-section baby and not breastfed, so I didn't have any microbiome. So there was a pretty clear reason, but it wasn't clear at that age. And back in the 80s, we didn't know about epigenetics and nutrigenomics. So for me, I was building in chronic inflammatory disorder after chronic inflammatory disorder. These culminated in things like mixed connective tissue disease, which is basically what we call it whenever you get more than 3 autoimmune diagnoses that include things like lupus, Sjogren's, Ehlers-Danlos, autoimmune thyroiditis. I had over 20 plus autoimmune diagnoses at the point that 10 years ago when I came here.
Yeah. People I have friends who have chronic inflammatory response and diseases, and there's hundreds of them.
Yeah.
I mean, and those people what I found is they tend to be some of the smartest, because when there's something going wrong with you and you're on a mission to fix it. Do you also share that sentiment?
Oh, I do. And I think, only you are the expert of your own health. Right. Your doctor is the expert, or your physical therapist or your nutritionist is the expert of the information that they give you to give you risk versus benefits. But I think I always come back to that.
Yeah. And then is that kind of what got you? Obviously lost the weight. What was a combination of exercise and nutrition? What was it, a mental change? What was it?
I would say all of the above, but I started with identifying what was chronically inflaming me. So let's start with 10 years ago when I came here. When I left Oklahoma or wherever I was leaving, I was on over 22 medications. So we decided, let's move somewhere that I can get holistic care. I was an ICU nurse and I knew how to take myself off of these certain medications. So I found alternative care providers in Colorado, multiple physicians, and we moved. So I started with just taking all the variables away. So first of all, I believe that a lot of my chronic inflammation came from compiling variables instead of stopping and going, hey, why is this girl so sick so early? Why is your gallbladder gone at 19? How are you still making stones? Instead of asking these source questions, we just kept piling on medicine. So I became a nurse and thought, well, I'll understand this science. And I became the best that I could at that. However, I think that 20 plus medications, it's kind of hard to identify what variables might be happening. And food was triggering me at that point too. So we got here and I started with getting rid of all of those things with the assistance of doctors and starting with adding the rainbow of live organic foods. So that was my first awareness. My microbiome was wiped, that basically I was triggering and allergic to almost every food. Yeah. So in order to start to turn that around, I had to start with what I could digest. So,
can you tell us a little bit and the listeners a little bit about your business now and kind of where it's at and what you do?
Yeah. So basically, over the last 10 years, I would get phone calls from doctors around the country and friends that I've just known and have seen my story that would say, hey, I have a client that they're on their 3rd autoimmune diagnosis. Yeah. They're on their 5th chronic inflammatory diagnosis, and they can't identify their triggers, their personal variables. So I would say, okay, look, I'll go ahead and talk to them and share my experience and maybe some NIH or other journals that can give them some applicable tools or information. Then over the years, I got more phone calls taking up my hours than not. And then last year, and I kept saying, I'm not going back into the healthcare industry. And then last year, the universe said, I think it's time to break your foot, which I believe all occurrences happen for good. I got a spiral fracture in ballet, completely off, non-weight bearing for 3 months. So I had my little peg leg, for 3 months there. Anyhow, that led me to discover Duke's program for health and wellness coaching. And I realized, wait a minute, that's what you're already doing. So I decided, okay, maybe I'll go back and get my board certification in holistic nutrition and health and wellness coaching.
Wow. And you've been doing that now, and you've been practicing that for how long?
Just about a year.
Wow.
I'm a baby. I'm new. And I just passed my nutrition boards. I've been health and wellness coaching for over a year, almost 2 years, I think now.
But I mean, just because you've been board certified, you've been doing it long before that.
Oh, yeah.
Researching long before that, obsessing, it sounds like, which I think we all have. Yeah. Trip's journey with genetics started, when 12 or something, 14?
Yeah, I was real young. And we were both talking before the podcast started. A lot of us in this industry are in this industry because something tragic happened that doctors couldn't figure out. We're like, well, we're going to figure out ourselves. It's that's like one of the things that you see across this whole podcast. All these guests that we've had on is, something terrible happens to them. They go out and find research on their own because no one's helping them out, and they discover something new.
Oh, and my doctors supported me. So let's take it back a little. We're talking epigenetics in 2014. My 10 years ago, there weren't these things. I actually participated in 23andMe's test runs, beta testing for this because of my rare disorders. So I hypothesized that there was something there. And so all of my doctors were saying, good luck, Kristy. What have you found? That's why they all still call me today, because they just felt powerless. So I feel like even our physicians and our providers sometimes are trapped with limited tools that they can provide. So
100%.
Yeah, we hear that a lot too with doctors and stuff like that. There's a big change in the industry. Speaking of that, what's your mission? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
To give other people hope. Really, when I had over 20 plus diagnoses and I literally was in heart failure, all organs were tipping over. I was in multi-system organ failure at that point. So I had dysfunction of the kidneys, liver, my heart rate, like I think I was talking to you about before we started the podcast, my resting heart rate at this point was 160. So I would vomit within steps.
Whoa. What was that? And how did that diagnosis, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here, but how did that diagnosis come about even? Like, was it a long process of figuring out, or was it like an aha moment?
The MTHFR or all the diagnoses over time?
I mean, you've been on a journey, so pick your.
Pick my battle.
We've all done it. You know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think we
yeah.
all have our own story of healing, and that gives us passion.
I had been getting diagnoses from a young age, and at this point I was 32, so I was over the bullshit. So let's just be real. I was done with, okay, this is my 15th, 20th autoimmune diagnosis. I do not believe that I have 20 separate diseases.
Totally.
I believe there's one thing. So really having that epigenetic moment when I participated in that study and I confirmed that I did have the MTHFR, I had also been on methotrexate, which literally strips your folate. So that became a quick awareness, an aha. Well, I had liver and kidney failure because I was on medicines that I couldn't metabolize. Do you get my drift? So that's why pulling off the medicines was so important.
Yes, yeah. We're on a war with pharmaceutical industry. I mean, it's done some amazing things, but also it's a machine and it's a system.
Yeah. I talk about intelligent medication use. We can tell by your epigenetics, what certain people, what medications they can and can't use. So that should be being discussed before severe treatments like chemotherapy are being used, or in my opinion, and in most good cancer places that I know are doing that.
Yeah. So what does a session look like? Somebody comes to see you. They've had, all sorts of conditions, which is pretty common. Our listeners often have been through a lot of things. It might be this, it might be this, it may be, and they're going through, especially with autoimmune conditions, because those are the most easily misdiagnosed, right?
Yep.
Constantly. I've had a friend with lupus that didn't find out for 10 years,
Yep.
kept going, and it metastasizes everywhere. You have gut issues,
It's heartbreaking. The more they have to prove it, the more they have to try to show, the more the soul is trying to have to prove, hey, I'm diseased, and I don't know that that's healthy for our health.
100%.
You also lose what you feel is your value of existing.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, hey, listen, I guess I'm just going to be in pain my whole life, or I'm going to be miserable my entire life, and you feel like your value goes down because of that, because your doctor's like, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. You have IBS. They're just going to label it as something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
or triggering on phone calls from family members or people because
Exactly.
they don't understand and you don't know what to say or do. So somebody comes in, I first just listen. The first discovery call is always free because that's it. I'm going to accept them where they are, and they need to tell their story.
Yeah.
They are the expert of their story. And even when I think I quote unquote know the answer, well, that's time to bite my flipping tongue, because as a health and wellness coach, I should be doing 20% at tops of the talking and 80% of the listening. And honestly, in practice, I find this to be true. I always think I know, but if I let them drive, they will get to a better result every single time. So if I think I have a plan, man, throw it away, because I'm failing the client. I need to let that plan come in that moment and let them drive.
And then what? So then you listen to them, you're hearing their story, and then is it really just a spider web from there? Like, hey, if I feel this, I do this. If I feel, or is there a process?
There's a process.
Okay.
I use a Duke Wheel of Health, and I have my own Wheel of Health. So I start to explain that health is a continuum, that there aren't magic bullets, that basically health is a balance of all of these certain areas. And I have them take a personal inflammatory quiz and a kind of like a life balance quiz that just doesn't diagnose or treat anything, but shows them where they're weighting their focus in their life. And then that usually gives some very typical awarenesses where they're like, oh, this is where I want to aim. And then they pick a focus, and we aim in that category for a certain amount of time. Minimum coaching I do for 12 weeks because change takes time. Takes 28 days, I think, to start to build a habit, to start to ingrain that neural path, and it takes 6 months to hardcore ingrain that neural path. So things like autopilot are going to take a good 6 months of habitual doing. So I try to get people in to make those micro moves. I also explain to them a successful session should be an aha moment and a step forward. That's pretty much it. So usually that involves a huge awareness shift from the information, whatever it's biometrics or whatever we brought in, and their choice and a step forward, and then we trend track for that whole time.
I was thinking that's interesting. I was thinking that when Trip and I onboard a client, or they'll come in, and whether it's weight loss or depression, even that sometimes that stimulates somebody to go, hey, what do I need to do? I want to work out. So okay, I have to find a trainer. So whatever it is, but to have, like you said, that aha moment where they're like, I'm going to make a decision here, not only invest money for sure, because, services cost money and that's how we make our living, but I'm going to invest time and I'm going to put hope in that this program's going to work again. And to have that aha moment is a very special moment, isn't it?
Yeah. That's them investing in themselves. It's like, hey, somebody's listening to me again, and there might be a way. Hence, we come back to the name of my business, The Noble Way, because there isn't one way. There's only your way, and there are a million ways to optimize health, wellness, health, hope, and happy. So.
Yeah, I like that. What are the did you have any questions, guys, before I start bogarting? Because I have 3 or 4 more questions I want to give you. We're gonna get into inflammatory markers and some deep stuff.
No, I was just going to say I really relate to all of that in the realm of pelvic health because there are so many factors that just relate to your pelvic health, and we go over like this whole circle of potential things. And even with the girl I had this morning, we were talking about her medications, and I had seen like an interaction between 2 things she was taking and brought that up, and she was like, oh, that makes sense because when I started that one, these symptoms started. And I was like, yeah, that could be like part of the puzzle. So it's so cool to talk through them with that and go through all the puzzle pieces and just see it kind of come together.
I like the way that you just put that. Honestly, that's all I'm doing, and I say this all the time. I'm holding the flashlight. Imagine a dark road, and somebody's leading you. If they're holding a flashlight, if they're too far down the road, like, hey, I'm an expert, let me drop all this epigenetic information, you're not going to see it. They're too far down the road. But I like to hold the flashlight for my clients just a little bit down the road. So I say, like, I've been to Morador and back. So they want to know, like, what are the ways, Kristy? Like, what did you see when you were there? Like, well, I tried this, and this therapy, and it was this. So all I'm doing is holding the space for them and holding the flashlight so that they can make the choice, not take their power and say, hey, this is the choice you should make.
Yeah, I use that all the time, holding the flashlight. It's funny to hear these, as we've done these, 80 so podcasts, to hear the other professionals echo the same, verbiage. That's such a good way to put it. So into the weeds, inflammatory markers, what could that be? I mean, are we talking certain foods? Are we talking certain triggers like stress? Give us a rundown of what.
Oh, you're giving my favorite topics here because
give me a rundown.
I will get a client and I'm like, oh, it's definitely a food trigger, and I'll get clients that'll tell me there are no food triggers, and they always find one. However, I will also say that it's not always food and exposome. Current research shows there are 2 cell types we can create just from stress and stress reaction, immune and endocrine. So talking about metabolic syndrome, blood sugars, cortisols. So some people are more sensitive to others. So I find it depends on the individual. By going through the sessions, they typically know, hey, I'm highly reactive. I get sick the next day. I just freaked out and I felt like death the next. So they start to identify, and we track through labs and stuff like that. But it could be anything from foods to laundry detergent to it's anything in the exposome. And this is why I work with the Wheel of Health to help them narrow that down and identify.
What's the Wheel of Health?
There's a Wheel of Health by Duke. I'll reference Duke's because I'm creating my own. It's not published yet. That's coming out later this year.
Nice.
Sweet.
Duke Wheel of Health is an integrative wheel of health that kind of looks at all aspects of whole person health in life and helps your clients gain an awareness that health is a balance of all these things, and that we typically are operating on autopilot in all of these areas, but that we can only focus on one at a time to transform. So it really is a tool to help them look at whole person health and gain some of these awarenesses.
Are you working with any other professionals side by side? Are you totally on your own doing your thing? How's that work?
I am completely independent and currently. And also, I collaborate with a lot of health and wellness coaches from healthandwellnesscoaches.com from every state with lots of physicians. And I get this question all the time. I prefer to work for myself because I can make more money, help more people, and I'm not restricted by the hospital's rules. I worked in the hospital for over 10 years. I was a director. I worked in a top ICU, and I appreciate the hospital for what they do, for the acute care they provide. Yeah. However, what I work in, chronic disease management, I feel like I can serve my clients better privately.
So why do you think that there's so many autoimmune conditions? Like, let's say 30 years ago. Yeah, let's go back 40 years. So 1980, 1970, 1960. We didn't. Now you look at the autoimmune conditions and the sheets, 200 names long. You go down and go, oh, it's this. What are your thoughts on that? Is that because of our food quality? Is that because of the pesticides we're using? Is that the lack of bioavailability of actual nutrients in our food? If you go to Italy, there's no celiac disease over there. They can eat bread. Here, everyone has what is it? Not celiac. What's the other one?
Gluten sensitivity.
Yeah. Everyone over here has
Yeah.
gluten sensitivity.
It's real.
Yeah. You go over to Italy, nobody has it over there. Are they not diagnosing it? Why do we see so many autoimmune conditions? Obviously, our bodies were not meant to have all these autoimmune. Something's got to be going wrong. Is it radiation? What's going on?
I think there's a lot going on, but if you want to know my soapbox,
Yeah,
my opinion soapbox issue is, especially when we talk about epigenetics, it's the amount of chemicals that are produced every day. Your body takes time to evolve and recognize chemicals. And I'm really sad I didn't pull the statistic before I came, but I'm going to reference one that I know is at least true. I know that there is at least over 2,000 to 3,000 chemicals that are produced every day that are new. It takes the body time to recognize and metabolize these substances. So depending on your epigenetic type, someone like me who is a double MTHFR may be reacting to chemicals they literally just cannot break down. So one of the reasons I developed a gluten sensitivity was the folic acid and some of the other chemicals, petrochemicals, put on my rice, my noodles. So for years, 20 years, I was eating this stuff. And that's been one of my hardest antibodies to actually get rid of now to this day, now that I've gotten rid of a lot of the other ones. Wow. So my theory is just the body. The body's always trying to achieve homeostasis. Anybody trained in medicine, we all know this, So we need to give the body the ingredients it needs to achieve that. I think there are things that are standing in the way. Also, pair in the current lifestyle, all the other things you mentioned. You get me? And that's why I like to let the client drive, let the soul figure out where they want to aim.
Well, that's like the same kind of thing as why you're seeing so many people with testosterone issues is the BPAs and plastics that we consume on an extremely high level, right? And there's so much going on with all that. I mean, it's not just celiac disease. There's all sorts of different things going on.
Is that a United States thing? Are we behind the rest of the world?
Well, a lot with food regulation. I mean, the EU doesn't even allow certain food colorings that we have. I mean, it's a lot different.
Do you guys know the rates on testosterone? I know hormone dysfunction rates in women, reproductive age women in the U.S. PCOS and endometriosis is over 70% of reproductive age females in the U.S. So when you ask, is this normal? It seems to be statistically a bit more prevalent here. Hormone dysfunction, yes.
It's huge. It's super undiagnosed, especially in children, which I don't know why doctors don't just look at the blood results. Like when you're getting a full blood panel, why not add the hormones in and figure out exactly what's going on, And
I think a lot of that comes back to, I do teach classes where I talk to pharmacists a lot, and I'm not really pro hormone supplementation. In fact, I'm very much against it. I think a lot of the reason that doctors are afraid to use hormone tests is because clients see this as, if I'm low in this, I get this. And that's not exactly how hormones work. You get me? By taking synthetic hormones, you raise those same inflammatory and cancer risks. So by replacing it, I know current men that I'm treating that are literally aren't currently fertile because of testosterone supplementation. And I have to explain to them, hey, dude, you got to pull off this. This may be transient from your testosterone supplementation because your body isn't recognizing that. And they think, well, I'm doing this better for my health. And I'm like, no, if it was better for your health, you'd be producing sperm. You get me? Do you get my drift? Fertility is one of your first indicators for health for all of us, women and men. So
what would you, let's say someone is going through andropause as a man, what would you suggest them do to naturally increase those levels?
I have them take my inflammatory quiz and identify which system they're having the most imbalance in. And let me tell you, most of the time people come to me and they think they have one area that they're experiencing this inflammation. But once they take the quiz or they look through these certain things, they realize, oh my gosh, I've been building chronic inflammatory symptoms my entire life. There are other clues here to find my gremlin rules is what I like to call them. So typically I have them take the quiz and that gives them awareness, okay, this is the system I'm scoring highest in and this rings true. I would like to aim at this system and tools in this category. And then we narrow from there.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Chronic what's on your chronic give us what's all on it? What would it look like? What would it be like?
How
do
long
you
is
eat meat on Thursdays?
No, it's really silly, and I actually have a copy of it with me out in the thing. I'll show you guys after. It's really silly. It's how often do you experience something? Let's talk about acute versus chronic inflammation. I want my acute inflammation response to work. If you cut me or chop off my leg, I need to heal that. However, if I trigger on that same response every day, what happens? Chronic inflammation, okay? Chronic inflammation is responsible for cancer, autoimmune disease, all of the major disorders that we have issues with today. So really, we're going to hone back on optimizing that inflammation in whatever way we can.
I had to do inflammatory. what is the diet where you can't have any inflammatory?
AIP.
Yeah, I had I was going through something at post-COVID. I was having all these weird symptoms. I mean, like the weirdest. And so I'm doing research, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try to remove all. It is impossible to remove all inflammatory foods.
And honestly, dude, when I do those, it is temporary. AIP is a lifestyle, and when you actually truly detox or try to elimination protocol to find your triggers, it should be temporary times because you don't want to restrict food. Long term, we want variety. Studies show that we should be eating 30 plants a week. I don't know. I'm very conscious of my eating, and I don't get 30 live fresh plants a weekend.
Yeah.
You get me?
For sure. Yeah, we used
plants.
to eat so differently. Like the way we should be eating is so different from the way we currently are eating. The massive agriculture that we have now, and we've completely prioritized, quantity over quality. And I think that's why we've seen, I'm echoing what you said. I think that's why we've seen all these things. It's crazy. So what's next with your business and what you're doing? Have you seen cases that you've solved and we're like, whoa, this isn't great? Like
Every person I'm seeing.
Wow. Tell us about
I
one.
love them.
Give us a story.
Yeah. So I'll have clients come to me, and I will let everyone know I will only work on identifying chronic inflammation and helping you optimize that to bring it down. But then I'll have clients come to me. Some have come to me over the last year since I was a baby coach that met me through school that would be like, hey, I'm struggling with fertility. And I'm like, I don't touch fertility. I have no expertise there, but I'll work with you. In this area, that client's 6 months pregnant. And I'm I won't identify, obviously, but, I've had a couple accidental pregnancies. This I see with all kinds of chronic inflammation clients, people who have been infertile for years, the minute they start to reduce. So I advise clients now, as soon as they start to reduce, go on, make sure that you're paying attention to this because it's one of the first responses I see. So where am I going? Over the last year, I've filled my private clients, and I recognize I really like helping people, and I don't like to charge crap tons of money. So we're moving this to group form, and it's going to be a group series called Optimizing Health, Hope, and Happy, so that I can take this quiz and these tools onto a bigger scale, and people can come and attend and get what they need when they need. So
That's super cool.
yeah, that's my hope, my dream, and that should come out in the fall.
Nice.
And what is it? Is that you said you were writing a book. Is that the name of the book?
I don't know what the name of the book is.
Working title.
Yeah, Dis-ease is not destiny is what I got out of my Hay House workshop yesterday. So
Hey, we're going to come up with a name on air right now.
Yeah.
No bull. I don't know. I can't think of anything. Wait, so that group, it's going to be a group format?
Yeah.
Okay. And part of the reason is to make it more affordable for people.
Yes.
Make more impact.
And I feel like they get to drive more. I see private clients, but I keep a threshold of 5 max. So my list stays full pretty much all the time.
That's awesome.
However, and also I feel like I'm very intense and I like to put all into my clients. So a group feels like a better format. They pay less. I get to come in. And if somebody needs me on a deeper level, well, then they hire me as the one-on-one on a deeper level. And that just makes my soul feel better. Like I'm helping the most people.
Would you want to do anything in the group format, like virtually, so you can have people different states?
Yes, and I already am. Right now I teach classes online to health and wellness coaches across the country. And I started healthandwellnesscoaches.com because there was no good place for health and wellness coaches to gather and to start facilitating this education and a community of practice. So
That's cool.
I'm trying to think of a place where all the health and wellness people start to gather.
Legit. Right here.
For the listeners, I pointed to the table. We've had Tripp and I, we were in corporate wellness essentially. And since we started this business, we're both, and now especially bringing Bethany on too, we're the trio we're blessed to have so many different people that are like smarter than all. I mean, everyone we have met has taught us something.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's what I feel like the group quality does or the team does. And I can't do that. If you get people into a room that share common system factors and I don't like centering around diagnosis or dis-ease. So I like to center around the wheel of health and the systems and optimizing those systems. But you get people in those rooms together, they support each other. They develop community. They develop drive. Yeah, and that's so much more powerful than anything I can do.
It's about the experience.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Actually, I have an idea to add to this. No, first of all, I figured out your book title.
Let's hear it.
30 seconds
No
later.
bull for homeostasis. You use the word homeostasis, which doesn't come up a lot, lot, but I absolutely love that word because it just encompasses what we're after.
Yeah.
Like chasing happiness, right? And it's not about adding things to your life or adding something to your diet. Or it's about removing things that are restricting you from achieving that because the body's already headed there. So maybe that's a working title.
Yeah, no, I
You
love
never
it.
know
I
you're
love
going to
it.
see it be published. Like, I guess let me get some royalties on that.
If you do,
If we get published by Hay House, well then,
Better
we're
copyright
sharing.
that.
We're having a party.
all right, cool. I have one more question here. Who is the biggest inspiration for you? And it could even be yourself. Like it doesn't matter who it is or whatever. But what is the driving force? What got you?
Oh my goodness. That is such a big question. I'm sitting here like, I have so many,
I love it.
so many big people that I'm not sure that I'm going to come up with that one right away. So let me go with driving force. That might be better.
That's fine.
I think that 10 years ago when I hit my head, I recognized that I had some stuck stories that I had developed, kind of like what you said. There were things that were standing in the way of my health. I was a workaholic. I thought, I'm type A, I make the most money. Like I had all these values. And I think it took me getting unbalanced to see, wait a minute, this is your gift. The things that you love, you can do this. Let go of this, hey, you need to work hard to make money. This isn't the case in these certain things. I think it took me getting sick to re-envision life and go, hey, what if life's here to give you an amazing balance and for your hope, health, and happiness? So it was almost like a complete reset for me. And I think that drives me every day. I think I see so much discord that I want people to see it as an opportunity for their growth, and I want them to see hope, health, and happy. So if there's anything I can do to shine that light, that's what drives me every day.
I love it. You can tell just talking to you that you have purpose, and that's the one thing that I think is the golden rule in life is finding your purpose. And I think sometimes it takes getting sick, or it takes almost dying to finally go I have a second lease on life. What do I do with it? And it always comes back to helping people. And it sounds like you found your sweet spot and your niche.
And people will even say things like, you're not the same person. You don't look, my voice, my personality. People will comment yes, I know you're the same Kristy, but you're not. You were a different person completely. Physically, mentally, spiritually, all of it.
Well, you're not lacking in energy.
Yeah, we know that.
Where can people, so one of the things we've had on this podcast is we've had a lot of people reaching out and saying, I love that podcast. That really, resonated with me. Where can people, what's the best way for them to contact you, find you, read about what you're doing, etc.?
I would say go to thenobleway.com, or you can search me on LinkedIn under Kristy Bochenek. But really thenobleway.com, I think, links to everything else that I have. So you can find me that way.
I love that.
Nice.
I'm not great at socials, this whole life balance thing. People keep telling me, Kristy, get on Instagram. Kristy, get on TikTok. I'm like, guys, well, then will I be on the mountain? I have very strict rules, and I'm on the mountain for the weekends and not on socials. So I'm working on it.
Yeah, socials are the worst. It's great for for business, but it is the most toxic for your mental health.
Yeah.
It's let me just check my my threads.
Just so much responsibility
How
to
many
go
likes
check
did I
those.
get?
Yeah.
It's 40 minutes later, and you're just
How did I get
wasted.
sucked into this loop of checking this stuff? And I'm like, I could be out hiking a mountain. No.
The worst is when a friend's like, did you see this post about this person? You're like, no, I got a job.
Yeah.
I gotta work. I did not see that post.
Oh yeah, what is that? Harley?
Oh, that's
Is
exciting.
that David?
I think we got a truck coming in. We're getting kind of close to the end. I want to go ahead and thank some of our sponsors, You vs. You. I'm actually wearing some of their clothing right now. Super comfortable, motivational wear that you can find on Instagram at You vs. You. Our partnership with Gene Planet. We absolutely love this company, whole genome sequencing. That's absolutely awesome. It's going to update your profile as you go along. It's not just a test and done and test and dump. We're going to make sure that we're getting through for the longevity factor here. We want to thank O2 Boost, as well as Pelvic Harmony.
I do need a soundboard, by the way.
Do you really want me to have a soundboard?
Yes.
I would be obnoxious.
We'll put it on the other side of the room.
I'm going to reach all the way over there.
Yeah.
I have to ask permission before I use a soundboard. Can I make that brr noise? Also want to thank Hyperspeed AI as well as, Cauliflower Labs, our supplements. So we have a new website coming out for that's dropping on Monday. So make sure if you guys are looking for Cauliflower Lab supplements, we had a little bit of a change in our commerce, and we are getting on that. Should be up and ready by Monday. We'll even have some more new supplements that are dropping on Monday as well to go along with this new drop. So I think that's everything.
I think so. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, new listeners. Also, thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.
So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you. Fantastic. That was fun.
I don't know what I said, but hopefully.
Wait, did you remember to